Hi, and welcome to the Divorce Coalition Live, where we share knowledge in our fight against domestic abuse in all its forms. I'm your host, Beverly Price. I represent a group of over 65 top podcast hosts, divorce and domestic violence professionals who have united to carry the message to increase the awareness of and create change in the world of domestic abuse. Our mission is to bring understanding, healing, and resilience to the forefront, ending the cycle of abuse one survivor at a time. Through this show, you'll gain valuable insights on all aspects of domestic abuse, from personal stories to the emotional and legal issues. With expert guests, practical advice, and enlightening conversations, you'll find that knowledge is power, and you too can carry the message to create change. Whether you are a victim, survivor, professional, or observer, you'll find something here that will help and spark more thinking. You don't have to face this alone. Let's start this journey together and create a better future. So without further ado, let's get started. Did you know that 23.5% of divorces are caused by domestic violence? And with 1 out of 3 women experiencing domestic abuse, the situation is catastrophic. So what can we do? Today, I am so excited to bring you a top expert in the field of divorce, abuse, and high conflict. Her name is Amy Polacko, and she is truly a freedom warrior. She's a divorce coach and journalist, and she turned her own experience surviving a narcissistic nightmare into a passion for helping other women. She's an award-winning journalist and has used these skills to shine a light on domestic abuse, divorce, coercive control, and our family court system. Hi, Amy. How are you doing?
Hi, Beverly. Thanks for having me. I have to thank you for all your work because you have been so instrumental in the Divorce Coalition, which I'm honored to be a part of. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, I feel so honored to have you here and have you as a member of the coalition. You bring such a vast experience to the table. But for your audience, I know your impressive story, but can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. I'm a divorce coach and my business is called Freedom Warrior. And my own experience has led me to this. I didn't have a coach when I was getting divorced. And I think every woman and man, for that matter, I do have some male clients actually, needs one. And I think there's so much we don't know until we enter the divorce world. It's like an entire other world, right? That we're not educated. Right. So I really help women especially take their power back before, during, and after this process. It is one of the most challenging processes, as you know, and experiences in your life. And everybody needs someone helping them along the way and guiding them.
Absolutely. And you might be wondering why Beverly, as a divorce coach, would want to have Amy as a divorce coach on the show. Well, I tell you, I believe in the theory of abundance, that there is so much out there for all of us. And when one of us succeeds, we all succeed. And Amy is just a fantastic addition to the divorce space. How has your own experience, Amy, led you to this? I know so many of us, enter this space because of personal experience. Tell us about yours.
Absolutely. And I think I started, forming a network, having support group meetings in my home, and it kind of grew from there. I do run a support group virtually for women called Strong Savvy Women. We have speakers all the time. And we have people from across the country. But I think that, again, I saw there was a need to be the coach I didn't have. And also, I believe that every woman has their own healing journey. And for me, it was kind of getting back to the journalistic skills I used. I used to be a full-time reporter. I was an investigative reporter on TV. I worked in print. I went to Columbia Journalism School, and I thought someone has to be writing about these issues. And I'm a freelance reporter, but I've written for, a lot for Ms. Magazine, for The
Right.
Independent, Newsweek, Observer, HuffPost over the summer. So, I feel like I am helping women by educating them through these stories so they can know the things that I didn't know, really.
Yes. I think that's absolutely so critical that we share that knowledge going forward. So I think we're talking a lot here, specifically when you combine divorce and domestic abuse, about kind of high conflict situations.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the most important things women often don't know before they file that you think they should?
So the basic things, I feel like, you should get your ducks in a row, right? I think oftentimes, look, sometimes someone decides, I always say to my client, that they want a divorce after something egregious happens. And you don't need me to get
Right.
into what that could be. You open
Right.
the door and discover something you don't want to see, and you're like, I'm done, right?
Yes.
But
Right.
a lot of the time, as you know, Beverly, this is bubbling under the surface for many years, right? The
Yes.
marriage has broken down. And I think what you don't want someone to do is to just blurt out, I want a divorce, right? Because that
Exactly.
right? That starts it right from the get-go. What people need to understand is there's a lot of planning you have to do ahead of time. And I don't want to sound, manipulative or sinister, but I will tell you that your partner, if they sense what's going on, may already be planning. So you've got to stay a step ahead. We'll get into that more. But, it is getting copies of some of your key financial documents, right? It's
Right.
making sure you have some cash on hand for an attorney. You can't just declare you want a divorce and then have no idea how you're going to pay for the retainer, right? And
Exactly.
right. I had one client who I think, and we're all guilty of this, me too, where, she didn't go and make copies of some of the financial documents and things started to escalate in the home. And guess what happened? She went to the closet that had the huge file cabinet and it was gone. So, right, you really got to do some of those things. And it's easy to feel powerless in this situation, right? No matter if it's low conflict or high conflict. And by you taking these steps and empowering yourself, you are taking your power back. You are able, more able, I'll say, to sleep at night, to know you have a plan. So those are some of the basics.
That is so important. We're singing from the same sheet of music here. I believe that preparation is absolutely essential. I believe that first conversation you have with your spouse sets the tone for the entire rest of the divorce. And I believe that there are all kinds of things that you might not consider. Safety of your technology, privacy, all of those kinds of things. I knew a woman who didn't think about the fact that she shared a family calendar on Google with her spouse. And she put an appointment on there with a divorce attorney with the word divorce attorney. And that just sprung the secret on her spouse. So it naturally started with shock and negativity, which led to a much more difficult divorce. So I'm right there with you.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because that is so true. Like we tell clients, right? Like make sure your phone is secure, make sure you create a new email address, right? And
exactly
figuring out when to tell your spouse you want this, it's going to be well thought out. And I even do role playing with some of my clients, as I'm sure you do
Me
too.
Right? Yeah.
Find the great minds think alike, like find a place or, your spouse. I spend a lot of time trying to figure out what makes their spouse tick so we can understand what they're motivated by, what their triggers are, how they might react. But ultimately, it is our client, right? Beverly, who knows their spouse best and
yes,
help in that whole strategic process.
Absolutely. I think it is so important. Are there things that women should think about before they're filing that are different in a high conflict situation, or what they suspect is going to be a high conflict situation, versus what I would call a little more amicable or cordial?
Yes, absolutely. How much time do we have to talk about the abuser's
Oh, we have
playbook?
lots. Go for it.
And I'm glad you called this podcast the abuser's playbook, because
Right.
people need to know about it. And I just want to preface this with, look, those of us out there helping clients with high conflict divorce, well, I should say there's usually a high conflict person. It's not a high conflict divorce. I want to correct that.
Right.
But we support mediation. We support collaborative law. It's just almost always not possible with these types. Okay, so putting that aside, I have to say that for all my mediator friends out there, and look, you can always try, right? But oftentimes these types will manipulate mediation. They will bully you in mediation. They will use mediation as a delay tactic. I've been there. I've been through it, guys. So I say, you know, a lot of what I teach my clients is learn from my mistakes. But
Right.
but the abuser's playbook is a systematic plan they have, and they learn about it, who knows, on websites, talking to friends, from their attorney. But let me tell you, it is almost play by play identical. And I have clients across the United States, and I've talked to women around the world, right? And it's very similar. They can start out, you know, positing their own narrative, putting their narrative out there. And it's often, she's crazy, right? She's an alcoholic, she's unstable. And it begs the question, really? You know, the woman you trusted to take care of your children for 20 years is suddenly unfit and has all these, you know, mental health issues, right? I think that societally, you know, this is something we buy into sometimes. The woman's crazy, unstable, you know, hormonal, all these things. I actually wrote a story recently, you can look up in Ms. Magazine, called Hysterical Women Out for Revenge. Family courts, misogynistic tropes traumatize women and children, because this is what we see over and over again. And what women need to know, and I'm sure you see this, Beverly, is that it's really hard to combat that narrative once it's out there. So,
exactly.
Right. I think often we, I don't want to say, oh, all women are so perfect and we're all empathetic and kind, but we tend to look for the good in people, right? That's how maybe we ended up with a narcissist to begin with. And we're afraid sometimes to take this divorce process to the next level for fear of creating World War III. And while we're paralyzed, they come out with this, that we're crazy, unstable. And the last thing I'll say about this part, there are many parts of the playbook, is that this is what happened to Catherine Kasanoff. She's a woman, if you haven't read her story, who lived in Larchmont, New York, battled for 3+ years to get her children back after her husband filed for custody. I wrote the first story about her for Ms. Magazine in 2021 before anyone covered her story. She had some wins. Ultimately, tragically, she decided to opt for an assisted suicide in Switzerland in May of 2023. And her story, you know, was shared on social media. You can read, I've done several follow-up stories in Ms. on her that you can read, but her attorneys told me, you know, once she was painted as this unstable, unhinged woman who was an attorney who had worked for New York State Governor Kathy Hochul, you know, and was accomplished and by all accounts a good mother. Once she was painted that way, it was very hard to dismantle that.
Wow.
I'll pause here. I have many other parts of the playbook, but I'm sure you want to chime in, Beverly.
No, go for it. Tell us another part. I love it.
So the other, you know, you have to understand that these types, and I think, you know, if your husband or wife has the potential to do this. And again, I said, I have a couple male clients who read an article I wrote and said, I'm dealing with this, and this is my wife I'm trying to divorce. But their whole mantra, and my ex-husband actually said this to me openly, the best defense is a strong offense. So they come out of the gates, filing motions right away. They don't stop. They will find anything. When we talk about, I'll get into custody in a second, but they file a lot of ex parte emergency motions. And sometimes the courts grant them as a temporary thing. But unfortunately, those temporary things then become permanent, right? So they make things up. I mean, I can't even tell you the stories I've heard. So that's 2. 3, they will often allege abuse themselves. And I know I thought to myself, oh my gosh, how could anyone do that? Right. I didn't have that in my personal situation, but I have many clients who do. One of the women I wrote about in my Huffington Post article over the summer, that I got a huge response from, was a woman who's like a top business executive in Massachusetts, actually spent a night in jail because her husband was able to convince the police that she was abusing him with no evidence. And, he used to lock her in a room. I mean, there was so much evidence in the other direction. So don't think it won't happen. I had a client recently who, thankfully, I had a relationship with the attorney, and we ended up both giving the client the same advice because we could see this escalating. We could see the signs that he was about to flip the narrative and say, she's the abuser, try to get her out of the house, get a restraining order and all this. And really, she deserved a restraining order. She had evidence of it, right? And so she did do that and was happy she did. So I think,
so she got ahead of him.
Exactly. But she's the perfect example, Beverly, of someone who was like, what do you mean? We were like, trust us. We see all the signs. He is priming the pump for this. And if you don't do it, he will. I mean, ultimately it's the client's decision. But the other thing, I think most women who would know this, unless you're in this world like we are, when women report abuse in custody cases, in divorce, they are believed less than half the time, 41%. And this is a study by Joan Mayer of George Washington University Law School. And so, people think, oh, it's so easy, if you're not familiar with family court, I can just tell them the truth and everybody's going to believe me. Not the case. And the last thing is parental alienation, which is the abuser's favorite counterclaim. When they're accused of abuse, they say the other parent is alienating the children from them, right? So they demonize the other parent. And, there's this trend in our country. It's been, been going on for decades that, father's rights, children should be with both parents, which everyone I know agrees with this if the two parents are healthy, right? Now, right? If one of them is abusive, either one could be the mom, it's not a healthy situation, right? But what happens is there's such a desire to place children with both parents and to not have one, quote unquote, alienated, that this ends up hurting mothers. I know so many moms who have lost custody. Some of my clients, I mean, it breaks my heart. They see their kids for like once a week. Catherine Kasanoff didn't see her girls. Then she had supervised visits. And what sent her over the edge, she openly said, was they went back to, she couldn't have unsupervised visits. She had to have supervised again. So, but I think the good news is that there is more media coverage for this. Peaky's Law was just passed in California, which, bans the use of these reunification camps, which are supposed to reunify children with, the estranged parent, the victim parent. Caden's Law was passed on a national level, and it now has to be passed at the state level. So Peaky's Law is the California version of that. For more information on this, I encourage everybody to follow and get involved with National Safe Parents Organization. Knowledge is power. You've got to know what's going on in family court if you're entering this arena.
So it's National Safe Parents?
Yes, National Safe Parents Organization. And, Danielle Pollock, who was behind Caden's Law and so many others. I've had her as a guest at my support group. She is one of the leaders of that as well. She works for the National Family Violence Law Center and works on this there are people out there working tirelessly on a daily basis on these issues.
Yeah. One of the things that I think is important is we are talking about high conflict personalities. We're talking about abusive personalities, but I think conflict occurs in divorce, even if there isn't abuse. There's even just conflict in marriage when you have a disagreement. So what we're talking about is not just, quote, divorce conflict, where divorce is a tense experience, a difficult experience, but we're talking about an acceleration of that, right?
Yes.
So how would you contrast what you're describing as a high conflict person with a person in divorce where there is conflict? If you know, if you get the difference. Okay.
Right. I mean, look, going through a divorce is one of the most emotional things you'll go through, right? It ranks up there with losing a loved one and so many other things in life. So any person is going to be triggered to some degree, and that is natural and understandable. And professionals working like mediators and attorneys know that. And by the way, don't go complain and get emotional with your attorney, right? Come to us because they're going to charge you a lot more, right, Beverly? So when people say sometimes, "Oh, I can't afford a divorce coach," you almost can't afford not to have one, because people will inevitably send emails, call their attorney when every little thing happens. You're getting charged their hourly rate for everything they do. So anyway. But I think the difference is that with a high conflict person, they are out for revenge. They are out to win. They weaponize the court system. They will not negotiate. I have a client, she's 4 years in. She just wants a divorce. She testified in front of the Massachusetts legislature, which is considering coercive control and litigation abuse legislation, and said, all I want is a divorce. What people don't realize is that these types, our family court system is really not set up to deal with these types. And a lot of the professionals are not educated to recognize them, right? And some of the attorneys participate in the litigation abuse, right? So these high conflict types are empowered and nobody's stopping them. They're like the bully on the playground that nobody stops. And that's really what's happening. So they will use the children. They often don't really care about having custody. They just don't want you to have custody. They know that where you're really going to hurt the ex-spouse or soon to be ex-spouse is the children, right?
Gotcha.
So they say often, I'm going to take your children away from you. You're never going to see them. These types could be blindsided by the fact that their spouse wants a divorce, but often, remarkably, they're already off having affairs with other women, and they still are vindictive toward their spouse who just wants a divorce and just wants out. So I think you see from the very beginning how they're going to behave. And, I'm sure you see this with your clients in these situations, Beverly. I spend a lot of time. I want to know how they met. I want to know how he courted you. I want to know when you got married. What is, because inevitably when you start peeling back the layers of this onion, you find out that at Bobby's first birthday party, he had a complete meltdown and rage, but you put it aside and said, okay, it was like, there were red flags and things where we can piece together that we know what his behavior is going to be. When, narcissistic types care about their outside image too. They want to look like the great dad. They don't necessarily want to put the work and the time in to be the great dad sometimes. And again, it could go either way with a woman, but they, want that image. So that's inside they're empty. Inside, their ego is bruised by the fact that they're getting divorced, and they want to come out smelling like a rose, and they will destroy you in the process.
Absolutely. We're going to take a quick break and go to a word from our sponsor. I'm Beverly Price from Her Empowered Divorce, the empowering divorce coach who guides women on their journey before, during, and after divorce. With the right preparation and guidance and support, you can move through the pain of the divorce process with knowledge, strength, and confidence. Schedule a free consultation with me at herempowereddivorce.com and look for my free ebook. You can get it at herempowereddivorce.com/divorce checklist. Now let's get back to the show. Amy, you've talked about so many incredible things. What I'm really intrigued about is let's talk about the realities of family court. Because like you said, I think so many people go into that thinking, well, they will obviously feel what I feel and they will know to side with me. Tell us about that reality.
Right. I think, you probably share this, Beverly. One of the hardest parts of my job as a coach is to really be the one who is introducing a client to the realities of family court, because
Yes.
I can empathize. I can put myself in their shoes. And when I was going through it, I was thinking, oh, if this happens, that happens. Well, if somebody said something about an outrageous outcome, I said, oh, I literally thought this to myself, that would never happen. Like if that happened, like women would literally be storming courtrooms across America. That's naivete, right? I was a babe in the hood who didn't know the realities of the situation. And, I think often women will hire an attorney. I've done this too. And you're just like, breathe a sigh of relief. Like, oh, they've got my back. I'm so exhausted of this whole process emotionally. I'm handling the kids. Maybe I'm working too and all this. My attorney's got my back. I don't have to worry about this. Wrong, wrong, wrong. You've got to be your own advocate. I work a lot of times with clients who have to light a fire under their attorneys, to get things going, right? So knowing that, this myth in our society that, oh, women always get custody. What are you talking about? She would have to be a drug addict in order to not.
Right.
Not true. Right. So you've got to protect yourself through all the steps we talked about, and knowing the abuser's playbook, you've got to stay a step ahead of it. For instance, I have a couple new clients who are just starting the divorce process, and a couple cases the husbands don't know they want a divorce. And, there may be a separation due to incidents that have happened. You have to be careful to not say, no, you can't see the kids right now. I don't think it's a good time.
Right.
That could be used against you. And if you don't know that, right, you can get yourself into trouble. I had another client who's post-divorce. And as we know, Beverly, it does not end when those divorce papers are signed.
No. Yeah.
Right?
Post-separation abuse. Yes.
Right. And many times it just
debilitating.
begins. You're like, what? So I have a client who's divorced, and one of her kids does not want to go with the dad and will physically kick and scream and not want to leave the house. And I had to coach her to, you got to tell your ex every step of the way. Like, I'm in the bedroom. I'm trying to get him out of the bed. Okay. Can you come to the front door? Like, this is terrible, but I don't want her to be, set up as the parental alienator who is not giving her child to the father. Right. So knowing these things is really important. I think being realistic also about how much the process is going to cost and how long it's going to be. Sometimes people think, oh, it'll just take a few months, or we'll be divorced in 6 months or a year. I think the average is 2 years. If you're talking about a high conflict divorce, you are talking about 3 years. Can be 3 times as much, 3 times as expensive. I am in Fairfield County, Connecticut, where, you have some affluent families and the legal bills are in the hundreds of thousands, in the millions.
Wow. Now, one of the things I work with my clients on is separating their emotional responses and their emotions from fact, because in court, emotions don't work. As a matter of fact, they can paint them into a corner. And so I do a lot of work having them document, but not document he's a bad father. Document the child is late to school these days. The child has dirty clothes these days. And so I'm sure you're kind of in the same thing, is separating that emotion, no matter how hard it is, right? Because you're hurting and you're worn out from a marriage of conflict. Then I think knowing that what you have to do, not only for court, but also I think going back and looking at what actually happened helps you prevent your reaction to gaslighting. So they're telling you you're crazy, these things didn't happen. But if you have your record, is that kind of your approach too?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I often say, look, it's going to be a part-time job and I know it stinks, but you have to do it, right? The quote over my shoulder, I hope it appears in the right way for you.
Yeah.
Is Joan of Arc. And I tell my clients, that's why I called my practice Freedom Warrior, because you have to kind of put that armor on. It's hard. You will look back and probably say it's the hardest thing you've ever had to do. But I want you to know there's people like Beverly, me, all of us out here. There's a whole community that's supporting you. And doing that is key. And then you are right, Beverly. And, the thing to understand about high conflict personalities, narcissists, coercive controllers, abusers, is that they get a rise out of it when they poke you and get a reaction. Your reaction is their fuel. Many people have heard of the gray rock strategy. You're just boring. You just state facts. Like you said, to protect yourself, it's always about the children. The children this, I noticed the children this, the child was tardy. Right. Not you, because of you, our child was tardy for school. So make it, and also the courtroom doesn't, I think societally and in the legal arena and family court, they often become desensitized. Like, oh, it's another one of these situations. It's another messy divorce. And you don't want to be cast in that role we talked about. So you're making it all about the children. You're a caring mother and you care about the children. And then with the boundaries, I mean, I think Our Family Wizard is a great software. So you don't answer. You do not have to answer their emails and texts, and unless obviously it's an emergency with your child. But they're trying. I have clients who are divorced and moved on into other relationships. And that ex-spouse is trying to come between these two people, trying to poison that relationship, trying to make it so they can't even ever have a peaceful dinner because there's constant drama. And you have got to take your power back and have those boundaries.
Yeah. I also try and share with my clients that abuser is doing this to fulfill a personal need that they have. That deep down, they've got a lot of issues. They've got a lot of insecurities. And it's not necessarily about, I like to use the phrase, he's not doing it to me. He's doing it for himself. And that's feeding this need he has that makes him feel okay and powerful in that process.
Yes, that is so true. And I remember I often tell my clients that I had a family member years ago say to me, why are you reading all these books about narcissists? You can probably see them in my bookshelf here. Anyone comes here, it's all about abuse, but you have to understand, because a lot of us, I know and so many, I just never considered that someone could be so duplicitous, so conniving, so evil in some ways. And so when you approach life and people and relationships that way, you're going to be taken advantage of, because there's this cognitive dissonance that you have to wrap your head around this. So educating yourself about what makes them tick will help you anticipate it's research, help you understand and anticipate what they're going to do. Also, in these moments when they trigger you, like I remember things would happen years ago to me, and I'd be like, these narcissistic types, their goal is to break you down. So you don't trust your own intuition. Your whole logic goes out the window. You don't know what, it's just like Gaslight in the movie and play Gaslight. It's named for, right? Like, no, those lights aren't flickering, but they really are. And you're told this so much that you start questioning what is real and what is not.
Yes.
Right.
Your sanity.
Right. So when you have something happen that triggers you, go read a chapter of the book, watch a YouTube video, watch some of Beverly's old, things like something, something that reminds you, no, I'm the sane one in an insane world. Right.
Yes.
And so I think that's important.
Yeah. And I'll say that lets me bring up a point. We have a divorce coalition website. It's divorcecoalition.com. And what we have created there is something we call the podcast hub. And we have pulled together bloggers and podcast hosts to put all of their top episodes and articles in one place. So you don't have to go to this podcast or this blogger or this podcast. You can go to one place and see 20 different hosts and bloggers information on domestic abuse. So that's a great resource for women.
Sorry about my cat here.
Oh, that's okay. So what do you really want all women to know about divorce in America right now?
I want, they need to know the realities, and they need to be educated, but in that education, knowledge is power. Know that there are so many groups you can be part of. I have a free Facebook group, Strong Savvy Women. We have people from across the country. I have virtual meetings, but you can, any support group, in person, virtually. You need a team to get through this. You need a coach. You need a financial person. You need an attorney. You need everyone on that team fighting for you. And you need somebody who understands. I have clients who say, you're the only one who gets it. Like I tell my family and they don't understand. They're like, well, are you imagining this? Or, they don't get it. Right. And so, I think that is really, really important to know that. I have a free download that people can get on my Instagram. I'm sure we'll talk about at the end. It's 10 divorce mistakes you can't afford to make. I think we've all made them, right, Beverly? So it's like, we are paying it forward. Listen to us. Listen to what we did wrong, what we didn't realize.
Absolutely.
And know that you will get through this. Like, I've never met a woman who says, gee, I regret my divorce. Never. For many people, I'm not going to, say that there aren't people who get devastating news of a betrayal and are on the ground, and my heart breaks for them. But I think a lot of women after the divorce actually see like a dark cloud kind of float away. And despite the challenges, they almost unequivocally say, why didn't I do it sooner? Right?
Exactly. And one point I want to share, much of my audience knows that I've been through multiple divorces that all involved abuse. And one of the things I learned after my intensive work was that I went from one to the other without stopping to look at myself, without stopping to learn about that marriage, learn about that abuser, and understand why I was attracted to that, so that I don't want any other woman to have to repeat that mistake to then learn through pain. So it's important to really dive deep with a coach to understand and analyze that, and then do the work on yourself.
Absolutely. I think part of learning the story of how you met, your soon to be ex-spouse or ex-spouse, is, you see things that now you see would be red flags. So that makes you more, attuned to that. If you're out there dating, I encourage people to, not date right away. Look, it's everyone's personal choice, but I will say, I think clients I have who do head out there dating, can go one of two ways. Either they haven't done the work and they may have rose-colored glasses again, but often it's the other that they see everything as a red flag. Like they put their fork down this way, and then that's my ex-husband used to do that. And like, so it's like you've got to, it is trauma. Let's just validate that. Like behind me, I have Oprah's book, What Happened to You? You know, on the New York Times bestseller list is The Body Keeps the Score by Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. I bring this up all the time. You know, especially if you're going through this with a high conflict person, it's trauma. It's living in fight or flight mode every day. And you've got to heal from that in order to move forward and be ready to, you know, trust someone again, love someone again, be in a committed relationship again.
Amy, this has been, I could go on and on with you. I think we can make this a 3-hour show, but we're coming up on time. So can you tell our listeners how to find you?
Yes. So my website is freedomwarrior.info. I'm on Instagram as @freedomwarriortribe. You can find me on LinkedIn, and also my free Facebook group, support group is Strong Savvy Women. And again, you know, look for my free download, 10 divorce mistakes you can't afford to make. If you want to read any of my articles, you can Google me, go to my muck rack site for journalists or my website, and you know, or Ms. Magazine has a lot of them that I've referred to today. But thank you so much, Beverly. I hope that we've helped even just a few people out there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being my guest today. You have helped so many women. I think this has been a fantastic episode.
Thank you.
And to my audience, thank you for being with Amy and myself on this episode of Divorce Coalition Live. All of Amy's information will be available in the show notes, and you can also watch this episode at WGSN's YouTube channel, Divorce Coalition. Remember, you can find more about how to get help, help another, take action as a professional, or stop the silence allowing domestic violence to continue at www.divorcecoalition.com. And please like and share our Instagram page @Divorce Coalition page. The more we grow, the stronger the fight against domestic abuse. Let's come together, break the silence, and champion a brighter future. Stay tuned each Tuesday at 9 a.m. Eastern Time for another episode of Divorce Coalition Live. I appreciate your support. Until next time, stay safe and grow.